Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in, imagine breathing in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just get a sense that tension, stress is leaving your body in your outward breath. As you breathe in and breathe out, become aware of any feelings of tension, any stress, any anxiety in your body. And just acknowledge that these are echoes of past events. And here, right now, that tension, that stress, that anxiety is not necessary. So I want you to imagine that you can just decide to release that tension. And sometimes the tension is there in the neck and the shoulders, or in the jaw or the forehead. Everyone has at least one muscle there tensing without realizing. Some people tense the jaw or an arm. They squeeze a muscle in their leg. And I want you to scan your body for perhaps what you're tensing without realizing. And the moment you realize that doesn't need to be tense right now because I'm just sitting here relaxing, you can release that tension. And as you release the tension, you can feel deeper relaxed. And as you become aware of what you tend to tense, then at times in the future, when you start feeling stressed or anxious, you can ask yourself the question, what feels tense in my body right now? And by releasing that tension, the anxiety and the stress goes down, giving you the ability to reduce any anxiety or tension in the future simply by noticing and deciding. That's it. Deeper and deeper relaxed. And as you relax, your breathing slows down. Your outward breath gets longer. That's it. Deeper and deeper relaxed. And I want you to use the power of your imagination to imagine that you've been invited to test the world's most powerful VR headset. They tell you that this VR headset is indistinguishable from reality. You see what you would see if you were doing that thing. You would feel what you would feel. Movement. And we've all had some experience of this, sometimes in a theme park. You go into something and it feels like you really are on that roller coaster, or you really are traveling through space and time, and it's only when you leave you realize that it was the screen that was moving, and the jolt gave you the impression of going forward or going backwards. But imagine that this VR headset is even more advanced, giving you the sense that you would experience everything exactly as it was. I want you to imagine what this VR headset would look like, feel like, how heavy it would be, and then imagine bringing it over your head, switching it on. And the very first thing you're going to do is to imagine that you're walking. Feel what it would feel like to imagine that you're walking through an unfamiliar town in a busy town centre with lots of people. And tap into this feeling that you know how to do this, well within your comfort zone. That even if you were joining a fast-moving flow of people, intuitively you know how to join at the right pace. There's no anxiety, just a feeling of confidence. You can even weave through a crowd of people, hardly even touching anyone, because you know how to read all of those moving variables in real time. And if you get the sense that this is something you know how to do, I want you to locate where in your body you feel like you know how to do this. Just breathe that way, feel that way, and hold on to that feeling. As the VR headset changes, I want you to imagine that you're approaching what looks like your car. Just through this VR headset, imagine feeling your hand open the car door. Imagine climbing into that driving seat. Maybe putting the key in ignition, putting it into gear, and starting to drive. But I want you to imagine it is a sunny day, a dry day. And for some reason, there's hardly any traffic on the roads. And I want you to imagine taking a journey on this dry, sunny day where there's hardly any traffic on the roads. Just imagine driving on a familiar road. Maybe you can imagine going from residential roads into busier roads. Maybe joining a slip road into faster moving road, but there's hardly any traffic to filter into. And you just get a sense that this is well within your capabilities. Just like walking around other people, driving on a dry day, in the daytime, no traffic around, feels well within your grasp. And just imagine that because this is your imagination, you can imagine that you've been doing this for hours. Imagine pulling over, having to fill up a tank full of petrol again because you've been driving so much, and it just feels that on this dry, sunny day, you could drive on those dual carriageways, residential streets, roundabouts, traffic lights. Nothing phases you. And if you get a sense that this is within your capabilities, let me know by nodding your head. And then I want you to imagine on the VR headset, it then says level 2. And you imagine coming out of your house, seeing your car, climbing in exactly the same way, taking a seat, putting the ignition on, hearing that engine start to make that sound, putting it to gear and then driving out of your driveway. The only difference is still daytime, but there's a few grey clouds in the sky. I want you to imagine taking that same journey, joining that same road. But just imagine that there's a few droplets of water. You just put the windscreen wipers on, but this still feels manageable. Imagine when you join that faster road, there's just a bit more traffic and it's going a bit faster, but you can still feel that you can judge how much time you've got to filter into that traffic. And then imagine that that road connects with a road that takes you maybe further away through scenic landscapes, rolling hills and countryside, all the way to a different part of the country. And just imagine that you can see in front of you, behind you, in the mirrors, that there is more traffic and it's faster. And occasionally there's the odd light shower. But I want you to tap into this feeling that your confidence is growing because this is more challenging. Because otherwise, you could fall into the trap of believing that everything has to be perfect for it to be okay for you to drive. Isn't it better to think that as variables change, you can adjust? And you're building your confidence levels every time there's something slightly different from what it normally is. I want you to imagine that you're on that same road, but there's a little number in that corner of the VR headset that says level 3. And daytime is starting to become nighttime, but you can still drive. And just for a few minutes or so, that light shower turns into heavier rain. Your visibility is impaired, but you simply slow down, create a bit more space between you and the car in front, and just allow yourself to breathe in a really relaxed, comfortable way. And hear yourself in your own inner dialogue saying, I can handle this, I've got this. This is what makes me a more confident driver. I want you to get a sense that at some point on this road it feeds into a motorway. I want you to imagine seeing that there is 3, maybe 4 lanes of quite fast moving traffic, and you're filtering in, but it's a long slip road. You get to pick the right time to feed into that. And if you need to, it's okay to stop. But you might not need to stop. You could just filter in, find the right moment. And when you see there's a gap, you're not afraid to push that accelerator and feed into the traffic at whatever speed is safe and right to do so. So it's now night, and you're on a motorway. And every now and then it's quite heavy rain. But you've always got the ability to make a choice. Whenever you want, just move into that lane that's the slower lane. Slow down to a speed that you feel comfortable. And when you decide it's the right time, you can always put that indicator on and just turn into that overtaking lane. And you can go all the way to that fast lane if you choose. But it's your choice. You get to decide what you want to do. And I want you to imagine that you're going through time and it now feels like this isn't the first time on a motorway at night. This is the 54th time on a motorway at night. You've done this so many times, and I want you to imagine how your body would feel if you've done this many, many times. You can see the rain, it doesn't bother you. You can join a motorway or a road you've never been on before. You don't mind. Because you've created the belief system that all roads follow the same rules. In which case, you create this belief system that once you've done a few roads, you can do any road. And then imagine it's the 117th time you're on a motorway and you're feeding in from a slip road into fast-moving traffic, and at this point, you don't even realize you're doing it. Your autopilot trusts you to do it in whichever way is the right way, depending on the flow of traffic, the speed of traffic. And notice that many of the other drivers are accommodating. If they see you joining in that initial lane, you can see them indicating, creating space, giving you the time to feed into that lane. I want you to get a sense that something's changing on this road, that it's no longer night anymore, it's daytime. But you're still on a fast-moving road. But things are getting foggy. Imagine you're just turning your fog lights on. You're slowing down, making sure there's plenty of space between you and the car in front. But again, I want you to get a sense that I can handle this. Driving is driving. And the poor visibility, whether it's because of harsh rain, hailstones or fog, just means that you slow down and have more space. You get to decide, you're in control, you're in the driver's seat. And even if there's a car behind trying to flash their lights or press you to go faster, that's their problem, not yours. There is no pressure whatsoever to change how you want to drive just because of other drivers. If they want to overtake, they can do. That's for them to do. You will drive how you want to drive in a way that feels comfortable for you. And then imagine that you can see snow on the roads. So you slow down. You get a sense that it's all about adjustments. On that dry, sunny day, you might feel more comfortable to drive faster. And on a day where there's less visibility, strange weather conditions, you can just decide that you're going to slow down. Because slowing down creates more thinking time. And more thinking time means that you can make decisions consciously or unconsciously that will protect you no matter what happens. So if the car in front brakes suddenly, automatically you can feel that foot twitching there on that brake pad, and just intuitively you slow down. As you have confidence that your unconscious mind can learn to drive, because that's how most people drive, they just allow their unconscious mind to drive for them. So the best thing you can do is to focus your attention on whatever is the most important thing. The cars ahead, the traffic that moves around you, or things that you need to notice, maybe like a sat-nav or a signpost. When you allow your unconscious mind to drive the car for you, you get to focus on decision-making that you need to make. Do you go faster or slower? Do you change lane? Do you leave one road to join another? And I want you to get a sense that you're feeling more and more confident. And imagine that this is the 250th time that you've been on a motorway. It feels natural for you now. You couldn't get anxious if you tried, because you've got too much experience of driving on these kind of roads in all different kinds of conditions. You now have a belief system that I can do this just as easy as walking. And if you get a sense that your confidence is growing, that good experiences give you the validation and belief that you can drive well, and new experience give you the resilience to enable you to feel that you're learning new ways of driving and that you can handle different variables and situations, just let me know by nodding your head. I want you to imagine there's a final level on this VR headset. And imagine you wake up in a different country and there's a car that isn't your car parked outside. I want you to imagine that the steering wheel is on the opposite side, because in this country they drive on the opposite side of the road. You might be used to an automatic car and you can see that there is a manual standard gear stick. It'd be quite right, if this is the first time to drive a car like this, to feel a bit of trepidation, of not knowing how well you can do this. But I want you to imagine that you trust yourself, that you learn quickly, that driving is driving, and this is only maybe 5% different from all the other driving that you've done. The ignition still starts the car, the accelerator still makes it go forward, the brake still makes it slow down or stop. All the rules are the same, it's just that this is slightly less familiar. So I want you to imagine in this unfamiliar country with an unfamiliar car. You're not going onto the fastest road you could possibly find. You're deciding to find those roads that seem quieter. You can get used to the gear stick, the car, the position. And as your confidence grows, I want you to imagine that you're going on a slightly faster road, and that your brain is adapting quickly to this manual gear stick, that your mind is quickly figuring out that this is just like driving. You're just on a different seat in the car, and that it's opposite lanes to how it normally is. I want you to get a sense that you're pleasantly surprised at how quickly you can adapt. And you can't help but thinking, by driving in an unfamiliar car, in an unfamiliar country, on unfamiliar roads, maybe there's people in the car talking while you're trying to concentrate, but you can't help but start thinking that how easy driving back in your car on familiar roads will be in contrast to this. Therefore, it has to be building your confidence and resilience, giving you undeniable evidence that you can drive no matter what the circumstances are. Self-driving cars require lots of data to learn how to drive. Millions upon millions of journeys, and they decode all that data. And I want you to accept the suggestion that the more you drive, the more data you're providing your unconscious mind, and therefore naturally the better at driving you become. Therefore you're unlocking a desire to drive, a desire to incrementally go out of your comfort zone, knowing that if you can do something outside of your comfort zone, it boosts your confidence. And if there's a challenge, it boosts your wisdom and experience. As you start asking yourself, knowing what I now know, what would I have done differently? Everything is an opportunity for you to become a better and better driver, simply by looking through the lens that your unconscious mind wants to do the driving for you, but it needs experience in order to figure out what to do and when to do it. I want you to imagine that in that same VR headset, it's now the 33rd time of driving in a car that isn't yours, in a country that you've never driven in before. And when someone says, "Do you want to borrow my car?" you feel completely comfortable and confident doing that. Even if you've never been in that car before, even if it's a different car, or a different size, a different shape, it doesn't faze you anymore. And at some point in the future, you'll be driving with such unusual circumstances, fast-moving traffic, in a different country with different traffic laws, maybe also with extreme weather, and still driving completely safely and confidently. And you'll recall those times that driving on a dry road in sunny weather, in the daytime with less traffic, used to freak you out. And at that point you'll realize that there's no going back. You're a good, confident driver now, and that's just how it is. I want you to imagine parking this car, whatever car you're driving right now, in your mind, and then taking off that VR headset, placing it down, and realizing that all of this are just thoughts within thoughts, ideas within ideas, dreams within dreams, to program your subconscious mind to instill a sense of self-belief in in your capabilities to become an excellent, confident driver, no matter what the circumstances are. And the only help it needs from you is real life experience to make this true. Feeling like you're returning to the present, listening to my voice, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, get a sense that you're fully integrating into your body in the present right now, fully in this moment as I count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.